Hi, I'm Mary Jo Ryder.
Hi, Mary Jo Ryder. I'm Mike Ryder.
Welcome to this moment with M and MJ, and everybody, welcome to my world.
Welcome to her world.
This is Mike.
Right. Yep, we're back with Sam. Thanks for joining us again,
Absolutely.
Sam. Yes, we had a great time. The last recording that we did, and then we're sitting here going, we should be recording, and we're not, and we're like, oh. Anyway.
Yeah, but just to reiterate, that's the Sam Sheppard.
Yep.
He is youth pastor at Faith Family Church, and we've had
Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
in Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
That's a radio.
That's right. We've had some neat conversations, and so we decided to put some on the podcast for you all to enjoy, and we'd sure love to hear your comments, and if you're enjoying it, let us know. And again, if you have any questions, we'd love to hear them and
Address them.
do our best to address them, or get somebody else that we know to address them.
Or you know what? I'll just say to Sam, deep dish.
Yeah, I'll be back out.
Yeah, absolutely.
The true way to my heart is through deep dish pizza. For those of you listening.
That's awesome.
Remember, you heard it here first. So, yeah, just so many good conversations. I'll never forget the one that was the first conversation that we really had.
Okay.
Was up in the band lounge after church one Sunday. Yeah. We were talking about ministering from a place of overflow.
Absolutely.
Right? Which is spot on powerful. But then you said something that it has really stuck with me, and it hit home really just kind of like bang. And this is not just for ministers, because every single believer has a ministry. It's called the ministry of reconciliation, right?
Yep.
So every single one of us, when we get born again, we're a minister.
Yep.
But what you said really just floored me on that whole thing. It's 24/7 go.
100%.
24/7, 365.
Yeah.
And we've been there, and I know you've been there. We were just talking about that with some of the kids that are over at your place for Bible study, and it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and you're having these amazing conversations. Well, that's part of the whole thing. It doesn't matter the day, nor the time, nor when, nor what.
Yep.
It's go. It's ministry. You were sharing a little bit, if you can allude to some of that, about what was going on with some of the conversations with some of your kids. Well, our kids.
Yeah, our kids. It's interesting because I talk with parents, and I'll sometimes say my kids when I'm talking about their kids.
Oh, absolutely.
And, I correct myself, and they go, no, they're just as much your kids too. And I'm like, I'm not paying for them, though.
That's right.
So you keep them at your house, and they'll come over once a week.
Sure. Yeah.
But it truly does take a village, and it's important to know that, and not only for parents, but also probably more importantly that the kids know, there's more adults in their lives that will speak into their lives and speak wisdom into their lives and can give them counsel than just their parents, and give them
100%,
different perspectives, because. And just through preachers, you can listen to a certain pastor say a certain thing, and then you can hear another pastor say the exact same thing, probably even the exact same words, and it just sounds differently,
right?
And it hits differently, and that's when your heart's ready for it. And
You're
at a different place, you're at a different time, your heart's in a different spot, and so you'll receive differently from different people, and so having kids have that avenue, regardless of the age, that, they know that you are available at any point in time.
100%.
Some of the best conversations I've had with kids, I've woken up from a complete sleep, because it's 2-3 o'clock in the morning and I have to go pick them up.
Sure.
And I say have to, but I get to, because I've positioned myself in their lives to be that. And wherever they're at, place of compromise, a place of temptation, or maybe they just needed somebody to talk to, whatever it is. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a bad thing.
Right.
But, they know, and I'm just so honored that, I can be that to people, especially the next generation, that if we don't teach them how to live as adults and teach them how to live as Christian adults, they're going to have to figure it out the hard way. And I think we kind of all did that. And I'm like, there's a better way to do this. 100%. And it's, like I was telling you guys earlier, this generation, And it's just like every other generation before them. Our generation did the same thing. It just, the names and places and faces have changed, to protect the innocent, right? But it's all the same. The human condition has never changed since the time of Jesus and even before.
Right.
We're all stuck in this rut, and we're trying to find the supernatural through whatever way possible. And the more that we can be an avenue to not necessarily teach them, but just point them towards Jesus. The more we can align together and continue to point them in that direction. I mean, the better off they're gonna be, the more prosperous their life is gonna be. You take it back to Adam and Eve; they didn't know evil. I mean, just imagine that. Imagine being brought up out of the mud, and the first thing you see is God. And then the next thing he makes is a woman, you're like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
What else you got? And then, you're like, I got a job. I got all these animals to protect. I got this hedge to trim. I got this garden to tend to. And he goes, no, today we rest. I think, today we contemplate and we look at how good I am.
Yeah.
And I think that's cool, in the story of creation, how we were made, or Adam was made.
Yeah.
And then he goes, okay, I'm ready to work. And he goes, no, today we take a break.
Right.
And I want to fellowship with you. I think, the whole picture of God, coming down in the cool of the day and walking with them.
Yeah.
It's more than a relationship. I know we say that. We say, we don't want a religion, we want a relationship.
Right.
But they had fellowship. They walked together in all things.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a purity and there's a love in that a lot of us don't really experience. Right. But anyway, so taking that and showing that to kids and saying, yes, we're here for you. We're always here for you. But at some point, the next, the chapter or the book of your life is going to turn to another chapter, and you're going to go off to do bigger things or, different things. You're going to move, you're going to, start a family, whatever. And I'm still going to be doing this.
Right.
Right.
But I am here for a season to teach you something specific, and that is to continue to point you towards Jesus. And the more, we as adult Christians can continue to do that consistently with them, man, it's a complete game changer.
Yeah.
And, I think we said it in the text. I was looking over our text, and I just kind of scrolled up, and the text that I landed on is scratch but keep scratching. Yeah. Do you remember that?
Yep.
We're barely scratching the surface on the authority that we as believers have.
Right.
And I mean, just touching on it. But, there's been a lot of prophetic, voices that have said, the last generation is going to walk in the fullness of this authority. Yeah. If we don't continue to teach the next generation,
right,
that just prolongs that coming.
Right.
And if we're advancing his kingdom, we want his kingdom to come. Yes, go and preach and make disciples and baptize, but you need to teach from a place of authority and from a place of victory. Right. And if we're not doing that, we're really doing an injustice to these kids.
Yeah, we're doing them a disservice. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, they're looking, like you said, they are looking for the supernatural because we are created in God's image. And so I think I just think we need to be teaching them and showing them and demonstrating the power of God to them so that they can know it's real.
Well, yeah, it's one thing to read out of the Bible, that God shut the mouths of the lions for Daniel and the fiery furnace the boys walked out of, and he split the Red Sea. And it's one thing to read it from a book, but when they show up and they see the power of God manifested in front of them.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, that's something you can't take away.
Right.
Nobody can take away. And, I was telling you guys the story of my own daughter. And just briefly, there was a couple instances that for whatever reason is being brought to my attention. But we had a fall event in youth, and we had some guest ministers come in, and my daughter does gymnastics. And about a week before that, she had fallen off the beam and scraped her shin bone.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, kind of to the point where, you know, the skin had separated a bit, and there was a very sizable bump on her shin. I mean, it was about the size of a softball, actually. It was, you know, quite enlarged.
That's pretty large.
Yeah. And so, you know, we prayed over it, and we, you know, continued to pray over it. And, you know, sometimes you walk out your faith before you see the evidence, but you know, continue to believe nonetheless. And, you know, nothing was really changing. And, you know, we had this event, and then she got up, you know, they were talking about healing, and then they had a healing service. And what was really cool about this is my nephew came to this service, and he's, you know, raised differently than you know, in my house. And so he was at that service, and they prayed over her leg, and you saw it diminish.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You know, and you witness it, and I watched him watch my daughter get healed. And that's a complete game changer when, you know, it's like the friends who brought the lame man in you know, into the house and tore off the roof. And Jesus is not like, hey, you shouldn't have torn off that roof. He's like, no, you guys have great faith. And so therefore I'm going to heal your friend.
Right.
And, you know, I believe that there was a lot of healing in his heart that we didn't see because of the healing that we did see in my daughter. And so that was really cool. But then the second one, I mean, blew even my mind. When my wife and I were engaged, this would have been October 10th, 2014. But October 10th, 2014, we got in a horrific car accident.
Right.
And hit a bunch of cows. Long story short, one of the cows, something or other, came in through the side of the van where my daughter was sitting and hit her face. And so her face was swollen up like a beach ball. I mean, it was enormous. She would have been 6 at the time, and she never shed a tear. In fact, I was bawling, holding her, you know, praying that, you know, God, you know, take it from her, give it to me type thing.
Sure.
And she's like, Dad, we're going to be okay. It's okay, Daddy. And I looked at her, and, you know, the side of her face is swollen. I'm like, this is absolutely not okay.
Right. Right.
But, you know, we did what we knew to do. Right. And so, you know, we called pastors. We told them what happened. We asked them to call every you know, believer in prayer that they knew, because we needed it in that moment. And, you know, we felt it in that moment as well. But so we went to the hospital. They said she has a broken nose. She's likely going to need reconstructive surgery on her face, because this is not going to be good long term. But we kept believing. We didn't accept that report, and we you know, had to get a new car. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
We had to get a new car to get back home, and we got back home. They advised us to go check with the pediatrician as soon as we had the x-rays in hand. I mean, we had the x-rays. And we get to the pediatrician. This is probably 4 days later, let the swelling go down a little bit.
Which is what they advised. I remember right.
And so we did that. They took a new x-ray. And, you know, it's always cool when you see the doctors who are supposed to know everything completely dumbfounded. That's a big gotcha moment, big God moment, actually. But they're looking at the x-rays, put them up. One is a broken image, and the other is a completely restored image.
Praise God.
They're like, this isn't the same person. You know, we see it. It was this, but now it's this.
Awesome.
I mean, just talking about it sends shivers. You know, I get the goosebumps every time, because it's just so awesome. You know, and I prayed as a young child, you know, God, show me your sign. You know, show me that you're real. You know, and I would play the little. You know, I was a child. I didn't know any better, and I'm like, God, if you're real, I'm looking out the window. If you're real, you know, move that tree with some wind right now.
Sure.
And then nothing would happen. and I'm like, oh God, is God not real? And then the wind would come and, oh, there he is, know? And it truly takes me to the, I think it's the top of Mount Carmel with Elijah. And it's like, God's not in the wind, right. He's not in the fire. He's not in the earthquake. He's that still small voice. Yep. And, he's always here. Mm-hmm. And even, you just need to be looking for him.
Right.
And, it's so cool because in my daughter's life, she's got these, nuggets to hold on to. Like God is definitely real and no one's ever going to be able to take that away from me.
100%.
And so, you can't just teach the stories from the Bible. They have to live them.
Yeah.
They have to live out the signs and wonders and see that. And that's the evidence. Mm-hmm. Otherwise you have a dead ministry.
Right.
If there's never any healing, if there's never any casting out, if there's never any, reconciliation, if there's never any of that, there's no God.
What do you got?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have a good story.
Yeah. Paul said that in 1 Corinthians 2 verses 4 and 5, for my speech and my preaching were not with enticing words of man's wisdom, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of power, so that your faith would not stand in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God.
Yeah.
And these kids are never going to, Sienna's never going to be the same. She is never going to ever forget that. Mm-hmm. I mean,
and then she's going to teach that, Yeah. She's going to tell
Yeah, she's going to tell that.
Let me tell you what happened to me.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's just cool because I've seen it so many times where I always tell kids, invite your friends. Mm-hmm. Don't bring your church friends.
Right.
I don't want your church friends. I want the unchurched.
Yeah.
My job is not to take from other youth groups.
Right.
Your job is to preach the gospel to the world, not to your church friends.
Right.
And there was a point in time when, we would, out of the other side of our mouth, say, don't hang out with non-church people, because they'll drag you down.
Sure.
Which isn't wrong, but you also have to be friendly to the non-church people.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not, there's no open door to talk to them about Jesus.
Right.
And it's so cool because, I mean, even, some common friends that we have together, they bring the unchurched people and they're like, we have never heard this taught like this.
Right.
And it's not my words. My favorite scripture is 1 Corinthians 15:10, but by the grace of God, I am what I am. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Not me. Yes, I work hard, but not me, but the grace of God working through me.
Right.
And it's so cool when they catch an image of God because of words that you're not saying.
Yeah.
Right.
You're speaking it and you're there, you're physically the vessel,
right.
But it's not you saying those. And they catch that and they're like, oh, this changes things. It was like you were talking, some of the common things it was like you were saying that directly to me. I'm like, well, God was.
Yeah.
Right.
I wasn't. I have no idea, but God knows all things.
Yeah.
And if you want to know all things and have that knower inside of you, let me talk to you about that.
Yeah.
And it's really cool how open they are, like we started, how open they are to supernatural things.
Oh, 100%.
And how, once they found that, the joy that is within them immediately, that they've never had. I've seen, kids have handed me their vape, as soon as they accept Jesus, and they're like, I don't need this anymore.
Right.
I mean, they've handed me, their ADHD medication.
Right.
They're like, I don't need this. And there's always a part of me that's like, whoa, you consult your parents first, but at the same point, like, they know.
Yeah.
There is a knower, and that's Holy Spirit, right?
Yes.
And there is a knower that knows all things, and they know that, like, what's cool is that they feel that and they respond to that immediately. Yeah. Even unchurched kids.
Oh yeah.
And it's just so mind-blowing. I'll tell you another quick story that this gal came up to me, and this is a church kid, and she came up to me before service, and she's like, Sam, I did something really bad. And that could go a million different ways.
Right.
But it could also be like, I cheated on a test.
Right.
Am I going to hell?
Yeah. Right. Right.
So, and so you're braced for my dad said it one, hope for the worst or hope for the best, expect the worst, and take everything in between.
Sure.
that's not really a Christian thing, but it kind of works. But so she said, Sam, I did a really bad thing. And I'm like, oh no, here we go. And it's 8:40 or 6:40, service is going to start in 20 minutes. And I'm like, how do I button this up in 5 minutes so that I can do it? And she's like, I smoked weed. And I'm like, oh yeah, I did that. Uh-huh. How did it make you feel? And I go, it was pretty awesome, wasn't it? And she's like, that is not the response I thought you were going to have. I'm like, well, I smoked weed a lot and I really enjoyed it up until the time that I didn't.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, honestly, it made me sick. And I go, that's the best experience you could have had from that.
Uh-huh.
Right.
And, then it was an open door for me to share my story with her and how, was it a gateway drug for me? Not at first, but it absolutely ended up being that, right?
Yep.
And, I never believed that until I lived that.
Right.
Sure.
And, because I reacted not as a parent or not as a shame, but as a, oh yeah, that's a mistake I made. Mm-hmm. It allowed me to speak that. And she's
exactly.
Yeah. And she's never gone back to that. Right. And awesome. It was really cool because this same girl, our last worship night that we had, I believe I actually talked to you about this already, but she came up, I gave them a moment where if they needed prayer for anything to come find me and I'll pray for them. Mm-hmm. And out of my spirit, I said, you need to start telling your friends about Jesus. Uh-huh. Very seldom do I say that, because they're coming to me for help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They're coming like I'm in a place of despair and I'm desperate and I need to get out of this.
Yep.
And very seldom am I like, no, you need to do this. Uh-huh. But it just leapt out of me. Uh-huh. You need to start sharing because if you don't share, it dies with you.
Right.
And
exactly.
it dies before you die.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why you're not on fire and the reason why you're not seeing change and the reason why God isn't working in your life is because he knows that it's going to die in you.
Right.
And she took that. I left that encounter going, God, why did you make me say that? like I'm supposed to be nice to these people or to these kids. And she took that. And since then she's brought, that was a month ago?
Yeah.
And she's brought 3 friends. Every one of them has given their life over to Jesus
Praise
since then.
God.
It's been incredible. All three of them I'm still in contact with. I'm discipling one of them. It's awesome. All because I had the audacity to be direct and do what the Spirit, there again, the filter came off and
and you yielded too. And that's
absolutely.
what she needed to hear.
Yeah.
It wasn't you being that way. It was Holy Spirit saying, you know what, I need a voice to speak this through. Boom.
Yeah. And there's so many times, people will look at me and be like, man, you're absolutely on fire. I'm like, I'm not. Yeah. I'm a mess. But God in me, he's got it going on for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. But this is great. So we're going to wrap this one. And I think one thing that you mentioned on a text that I'd like to see if we can get into is compassion. Cause you were like, you know what, we don't even, it's one of those we haven't even scratched the surface yet.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll chit chat about that a little bit on our next time. So anyway, thanks for joining us again. We love having you along.
Yes, this has been great. Yeah, and it was fun to hear. It's just fun to hear how God is working.
Testimonies are powerful.
Amen.
Yeah, doing powerful things. So we hope you all enjoyed this, and we'll see you next time.